Alrighty, so in this part, we are going to be doing the Guardians. These are endgame bosses. You can acquire these maps by just playing the game, or you can trade these with players, and Kyrat can also happen to have them sometimes on the Atlas missions. If you get lucky, you can see them here. There's actually going to be the 4 maps: the Phoenix, the Hydra, the Chimera, and the Minotaur. So in my personal opinion, the Minotaur is one of the more difficult ones. However, most of these will have their own mechanics. So in the very beginning, it's just a regular map like all of them, but at the very end of the map, there is a boss to actually defeat. If you want to enable any other buffs, like for example Nico, I think it's excellent to go ahead and have Nico, because you get that permanent buff up from getting the little like soul fights. Because these bosses, they're quite difficult. They have their own mechanics. So it's just like a regular map. So I'll do one here for the sake of just completing the map, so you guys can see what the map looks like. You may see these little like orbs that follow you during the map, and those orbs can explode and do a massive amount of damage to you. Got a nice amount of shrines here, so that's going to be excellent. Hopefully we can collect all the soul fights before the boss fight. But the map itself is basically the same as every other map. However, the boss, the Minotaur, when he goes in the ground, he will jump out at you. But each one of them has their own mechanics, so it has to be kind of shown off. It's not like a regular map boss. These are special ones, and they're supposed to be a lot harder. Although, our damage might be so high because all the shrines. Yes. So when he goes in the ground, he will pop out. That will one-shot you. There's also these lightning coils. If you go through them, you can see that that's an AoE like damage on the ground. If these lightning coils are activated, he will do a massive amount of damage. He will also have like a rock shower fall on you. You want to kind of hug the corners so it doesn't AoE like the middle side. So that's kind of the ideal way to play against him. But we might melt him so fast it might not show off all the mechanics. But see, he just went into the ground. You want to be kind of cautious with that. And when the rocks start falling on you, you want to move. But I'll go over like what we've kind of swapped over with the build as well. And you could do that in the beginning if you want. So you see, eventually, a lot of the areas will be covered by these rocks. And if you see the little, like, coils over there, those coils will shock you, making you take more damage. However, on my Pantheon, I got the reduction to shock damage. Something else happened, and we almost ripped over there. But let's just go back into the portal, come right back, and we'll be a-okay. So that was relatively easy, but the thing is that you at least got to see like the showers of rock, and that's why you want to hug the wall versus sitting right here. So it's any of the walls, and that way you get less of a chance where it covers more of the map, if that makes sense. But we just got the fragment of the Minotaur, so every single one of these bosses will drop a fragment, guaranteed. So what we're going to do is we're going to collect these 4 fragments and put them in. Since the map itself doesn't really matter too much, like, you know, we just did the map, the boss fight is the thing that I have to show you guys. So this is one of the fragments. We're going to go and fast forward to the boss fights of each one of these, and I'll show you guys the mechanic of the Chimera, Hydra, and Phoenix. But in my personal opinion, the hardest one is the Minotaur. Alright, next map boss that we're doing is the Chimera. So Chimera is actually relatively easy. There's one ability like that where you see that giant ring. You want to stand outside of that. Also, I guess this one has like the shaper shooting extra balls out of the sides, so trying to get hit by those. So you do some damage to him. He'll eventually go away, and during this, there's going to be other monsters that you can fight. You can use this time to refill up your flasks, or if you want to stop running your movement speed flask, you can run a flask that will give you HP. It's always good on most of the bosses to drop your movement one, the Quicksilver flask, because it's just unnecessary in most scenarios. But eventually he's going to have all these smokes come out. All of these smokes may have him inside. So that's like the one mechanic with him that is kind of difficult. When he goes into the smoke, you have to go in the smoke as well. Basically, there's like, I don't know, maybe 8+ little smoke clouds he leaves, and you have to walk through each one to find out which one he's in. Eventually, once you get the right one, he'll pop out of it. That's the only mechanic that makes him, I guess, different. And then, you know, I have to explain that because the first time I did this, he just disappeared, and I was just running around the map, and he will just continuously damage you. You have to go through it. So sometimes you get lucky. He's on the first one. He's doing his move where it's that giant red circle. Step outside of that, and he's a pretty easy boss, though. But he's one of the bosses where you can't just DPS him so hard that he instas. He has this like mechanic that you gotta do. But all the small monsters that come out, they're pretty much a face roll. Oh, he's doing this ability now. This is why it's nice to have the flask, because sometimes you get unlucky and it just takes a couple tries.
Yes.
And we got him. And some of the items, you'll see that they have these little like icons next to them. Sometimes some of the items can roll with certain things that normally you cannot roll on it. Like for example, this one has we have socketed gems are supported by level 20 maim, and then it also has maim on hit. So there are some things that you can't normally get on like an item drop pool, and these are going to be called influenced items. And sometimes it's better to have them, sometimes it's worse because you can do other things with non-influenced items. But that was the Chimera. Now we have two more to go and complete. We have the Phoenix as well as the Hydra. Alright, now we have the Hydra. So this boss has a bunch of turrets on the side. Ideally you want to stay behind it, but it's a ranged boss. But it's basically all these giant ice balls that come out from the left and right. Don't get hit by them. He's a ranged character. Yeah, you don't want to get hit by the giant balls. Basically the only thing that really matters a lot. And most of these maps you want to run them like absolutely white. You don't want to add any difficulty if it's your first time. It's at least my recommendation. Okay, now we're just gonna melt them. Massive amount of damage. What should be his last. He also kind of goes away, but he's a lot faster to eliminate. There we go. Now we've got another piece of the setup here. So we have 3 out of the 4. And one thing you can do right before you enter these boss fights, because they are kind of challenging, is make a portal. That way if you die, you don't have to walk all the way from the very beginning, because it takes, you know, just like any other map. Some maps are longer than others, and it just helps out. Alright, now we're coming up to the Phoenix. So Phoenix, oh gosh, there's another, like, there's an essence monster. I'm just going to open it up, just so I don't have to see extra monsters here. So there's one ability that the Phoenix does that's really, really deadly. And that's, hopefully I can show you it. I don't want to kill him too fast. Oh, he might actually die. Here, let's do this so he can hopefully do the move, because it's important for the tutorial. And I had a bunch of shrine effects, so he was going to melt too fast. So what we need him to do is, okay, this is the only move I need to show you. When you hold still, you want to move far away. He's going to activate an ability that can one-shot you in a giant AoE. But it's only when he holds still. Other than that, you gotta either just run around. He has like a little like dash attack, but most of the stuff doesn't really matter too much. It's only when he holds perfectly still. You don't want to be anywhere near him. You just move away. He has a giant charge up AoE explosion attack, but that's literally it. That's the only thing that you need to look out for with the Phoenix. And now we have combined all of the 4 pieces, and what are we going to do with these? Well, we're going to open up another boss fight. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put all the pieces in, the Hydra, Chimera, Phoenix, Minotaur, put them all in, and then we are going to activate it. And this is going to open up another boss. This boss is called the Shaper. One thing that's important is you do want to have a decent amount of cold penetration for this boss. Otherwise, well, with your Blizzard Crown, you won't reach the threshold. You're not going to do that much damage to him, but he can still be killed. Most of the endgame bosses will have like 50 resistances, but let's go ahead and go on in. And we're going to fight the Shaper. So this one, I'm just going to play out the whole thing because even though there's like an area in the very beginning where you just have to kill a bunch of bosses. So how it works in the very beginning is there's several random bosses that you'll have to fight, but they're pretty easy. It's just like any map boss, but you just have to kill them. Nothing too special. And if you want to take multiple life flasks, that is an option. This one, unfortunately, is sitting in a fire AoE, so we can go up to it. I think we might be able to have the sustain to sit in the fire. There's also a mechanic where you can activate the lever on this boss, but it doesn't matter. So when you kill the enemies, well, basically it's the boss, there's a little portal, it teleports you right back to the center. So there are 4 different bosses that you have to fight, and then you get to fight the Shaper, and then you have to fight the Shaper multiple times. So yeah, these bosses don't really matter too much, but I guess it's kind of a test to, can you actually kill them? So the Shaper is the main like boss that we're actually looking for, and he can actually drop an item that is kind of useful for us. It's called the Dying Sun. It gives us additional arrows, so it can be used. So this is one of the bosses where, unfortunately, you have to wait for it. It drops a bunch of small monsters. It comes back. Okay, and it is gone. Now we go to the next. And some bosses can be harder than others, but again, it's just, you need to defeat 4 of them. And if you want to activate like Tornado or I'm using Hydrosphere, it's pretty good for the Ice Shot because you get like extra cone explosions, because the way Ice Shot works is it hits the target and then behind the target it releases a cone of ice damage. So you can get a little bit more DPS by doing it this way.
You are being selfish.
That. And we have our last one. This last one I want to make sure we have our charge for the Shaper for our Vol Ice Shot. The Shaper's mechanics are a lot better, and it's relatively fair. As long as you have decent movement speed. Okay. Because he has a slam attack, which will actually do a good amount of damage. Alright, so now we are going to be entering the next portal over here. Make sure it's not the one that goes back to your own hideout. But how this mechanic is going to work is we want to keep Zana alive. It's pretty easy to keep her alive because, well, if you're not killing the monsters, then you're not doing your job. So, I'll explain the mechanics as they go along. So, just shoot and move until you see the white orbs. When he does that and he disappears, he's going to be doing a slam attack, save your dash, and then dash out of the way. When he shoots his laser thing, this is kind of like your DPS window. And any of these white orbs you want to actually pop on the sides because they're going to leave a AoE on the floor. And you don't want that. He's doing a slam attack, so I'm just going to move out of the way. And you can see that. That slam attack will kill most people. That's the only thing that's going to one-shot you. So you want to pop this on the edge again, so the arena doesn't get clogged up with too many of those in the middle. But you have to protect Zana here, but it's because if you don't, then it's bad. Because she'll use his shield later. He's doing a slam attack right there. It's very, very fair. He does a slam, now we can engage again. And I want to pop this on the side. But it gets a little bit more intense as more mechanics get added. Ooh, you see that the AoE there almost got me. He's doing a slam attack. I'm going to move out of the way. You can resummon your Ice Golem if it does rip. So during this he does recover, but it's nothing that you can really do about it other than just being as fast as possible. But our build is really fast, so that's not a problem at all. But for certain builds that are like maybe single target, which I don't know, it's more so if like maybe someone's never played PoE before. Let me see if I can I dash across this? Yep, I got lucky on that one. Sometimes carrying a blink arrow can be useful just for specifically that thing, like swapping weapons. Just use blink arrow. There's a boss at the end over here. I want to save my Vol Ice Shot for the Shaper, and we're going to fight the second form of the Shaper. he just had to die right there and leave the AoE. Okay, now we can go fight him. We summon our golem. So in this part, we're gonna have to stay closer to Zana once he launches all his projectiles. So he's doing his laser. That's your DPS window. And then when she says to me, well, you go to her. Now you have to watch out for the white orbs, because those can still come out. So she's going to protect us from these orbs. But Shapers sometimes will immediately follow up with like an attack, like a laser. So you have to kind of still move because you don't want to get hit by that. That'd be really bad. But having these archers, and I'll show you guys the build that we have for the gameplay like right after. So we're going to have that pop on the side. He's doing his laser, so this is our DPS window. He's going to do a slam attack, move out of the way. He's doing his laser, this is our DPS window, but we also have to keep popping these on the side. Okay. So you can hold still for like a couple seconds, but eventually sometimes he'll just throw out a beam. Oh, that's bad. That popped right there. Kind of in the middle, so it can be kind of bad if that happens. You can also just dodge every one of those projectiles if you want to, but having that drop right on Zana, no good. He's gonna do a slam attack, move out of the way. Laser. Gonna pop these on the side, ideally. There we go. And as time goes on, you'll get better with this. Like, for the first time I fought him, well, I definitely died a couple times, but you got a couple tries. You got 6 tries, so it's no problem if you fail it. It's not the easiest boss, but it's a relatively fair boss, I would say. There are certain bosses in this game where, well, yeah, I definitely don't feel like that they're fair. Alright, let's go up. Almost finished. Oh. And we have to fight the next form, which is a lot more difficult. The last form. Alright. It's really cool looking. He's opening up with a slam attack. Watch that. We're gonna fight the small stuff. And having ice shots really nice because a lot of times things just get frozen and you don't even have to engage in the mechanics of like the fights because they're just kind of frozen. I'm gonna pop this on the outside over here. Sometimes you can open up with an immediate like slam or a beam, and it's just really nasty. So oh, there's the laser. Pop that one. That's kind of close to the outside. Sometimes you always can't have it like perfectly where you want it, but ideally you want it to overlap so it covers less. That'd be a smarter thing to do. Doing a slam attack. There. See this one over here? Pop that one right there. Go. We're gonna refill our flasks. This is a great time to summon your golems again. The reason why is because sometimes like cashing the golem will get you killed. Let's do a slam attack. battlefield's getting really clogged up with all these like little AoEs. That's why you usually want to pop him on the edge, but the final fight, he throws a lot more, so obviously it becomes a little bit more difficult. But he did drop some boots that have some interesting play. Like the only thing that we'd be able to get that we would maybe want is Dying Sun off him. But this does let your projectiles pierce 5 additional targets if you've killed recently, which is within the last 4 seconds. It can be useful for certain builds, but for us, we have no real use for it. And at this point, they're probably not worth more than like 1 chaos. Okay, there's like 2 chaos. It's not really worth anything. But some of these items can be worth it if you happen to get a certain roll. Like this one over here, like a good roll that some people may want is, let's say, physical damage taken as whatever element. That could be a good thing, and you can see if someone wants it. But like at this point, it's probably not going to be worth crafting onto because it's relatively later in the league, unless it rolls like really high rolls on a lot of different stats. But you can pick up the items and identify them. Maybe you see something cool that you're really interested in. There are some cool helmets that you can get, like getting socketed gems are supported by hypothermia. That could be maybe useful for someone. But ideally, you probably wouldn't want like incinerate hypothermia. But there are really weird niche builds in Path of Exile that like someone's just looking for that like one exact thing, and they're willing to pay a lot for it if there's only one in the market. But if you do kill the Shaper, there are these extra fragments that can drop. So what you can do is you can just farm these. There's people that just do this. All they do is they farm what's called Watcher's Eyes. So they grabbed these because there's Shaper and then there is the Elder. And so Elder kind of has the same mechanic. There's 4 bosses that you have to defeat. Although those are like so easy, it's like not even really worth mentioning. And I'm probably just going to fast forward to like the... I'll show you guys like the mechanic of the Elder, and then you can fight the Shaper and the Elder at the same time. That's how you get another one of the Watchstones. But these are some of the items that can drop that are actually worth stuff from this mechanic. But we have Shaper down. Alrighty, so to round off the video, let's go over the pieces of gear that I had used in the gameplay that you guys saw, so at least you'll have somewhat of an idea of kind of what we had. Keep in mind, all of these are just suggestions. So, since the last time I have upgraded my bow, I actually crafted this, actually relatively cheap, with the exception of buying the guaranteed 6 links. You can actually craft a bow for relatively cheap. However, more than likely I would recommend you guys just to buy the item because it's just going to be way better. So what you can do is you just go to the Path of Exile trade website and just put in Chaos Orb equivalent, and divines are about 200 plus right now. So we just type this in, we go over here, go to bow, and we can just sort it by whatever has the highest DPS. If you're still using your 6 link for your chest piece, that's totally fine. Or if you find one that's 6 linked over here, that's an option as well. So we just want to go click on where it says DPS, but then I want to click on Elemental because I don't want Chaos. Because you can convert Chaos, but converting Physical is just like free with our build. So this one over here for 1 Divine, we can get 1000 DPS, which it's pretty good. The downside with Thicket Bow is that it has very little crit, but the upside is that it has very fast attacks per second. So that is something that you'll have to kind of factor in what type of bow do you want. If you're going crit, you can go for the Assassin Bow. This one over here rolled with good crit strike multi, which is what I kind of value. And on top of that, I crafted this for relatively cheap. Now, the reason why I'm not going to show you guys a tutorial on crafting right now is because 1, it's kind of extensive, and 2, it's a hefty investment for something at the final step to be random, and I don't like giving you guys things where it's like, okay, you have like a 1 in, X amount of chance to hit this, and you just have to hope that you hit it. Now, I didn't get exactly everything that I wanted. A crit multi would be much better than, let's say, some other stats on the bow, but as long as it rolled with relatively high cold damage, which I can guarantee with essence crafting, and then I could just buy a bow for like 20 chaos, which is what I paid for this bow, with just the Fracture tier 1 fire mod on it. But this is getting way too intense for just going into like how I crafted this bow for this video. I may show you guys how to briefly craft, but the reason why I think it's way better just to buy the item is because you can spend so much and just get absolutely, and I mean absolutely nothing via crafting. So just keep that in mind as well. So this is what we're running for the bow. I'll mess over all the pieces of gear, but I'm also still running a lot of the older pieces of gear. And if you guys want to, I'll put the PoE Ninja so you guys can exactly see what I was using. So I also purchased this Blizzard Crown that happened to have Ice Shot damage on it, and then from there I just crafted it with essences, and if you want to just buy the item, again, I really recommend that because all I did was essence craft something with the reservation efficiency on it, and I got lucky, and all I'm really looking for is life, but it happened to have cold res, which is okay. It happened to have intelligence, which is good, and obviously I wanted HP, but there are much better options that you can get than this. All it came down to was increased ice shot damage. Another thing is, in terms of our 6th link, what I'm running right now is Inspiration, Crit Damage, Mirage Archer Support, Elemental Damage with attacks, Ice Shot, and then Awakened Cold Penetration. Like I mentioned in the very beginning of the video, for a lot of these pinnacle bosses, you do want high cold penetration, otherwise your Blizzard Crown is actually going to be working against you because it treats the cold resistance as 10% higher than the actual value. Meaning if it is negative, it will go further in the negative. But if they don't have that minus resistance, it's going to make it harder because they're going to gain more resistance. So it's kind of a double-edged sword with Blizzard Crown, but as long as your character is built good enough, it's just like one of the best in slots. There's also some hype with Asanos Mark right now, which automatically casts Lightning Warp, which is something I will show you guys later. It does make the game super, super fast, and I do like it, but unfortunately for bosses, it loses out a lot. So you can be a character if you want to, or like if you're doing very specific things, you can swap to things, and that is something I will show you guys later. But in terms of the armor, I did get a Hero's Ire, which is this chest piece over here. And so we were running before, I was running like Ghost Shrouds, which I actually think is pretty good. At the time, it was pretty nice, but eventually these kind of went down in price. Certain items in Path of Exile are very expensive, and they just absolutely just dip down in price as time goes on. So if I was to scan this with Awakened PoE trade, it was like 5 Divines at the start, but now it's starting to go down in price, and if you can pick up one of these chest pieces, it's really good. It adds a lot more spell suppression. It also gives you increased chill duration on enemies. It adds extra cold damage. Basically, what it adds is spell suppression, really, really high evasion, and on top of that, it adds good cold damage with your bow attacks, which we're using Ice Shot, so it works quite well. That 30 spell suppression actually lets me take 4 skill points out, which that's fantastic, because then I can use 4 of my other skill points and get more like crit over here, or whatever the case may be. So this is what my tree looks like. And then I'll also show you guys my Atlas, and I'm still just doing Delirium for extra currency. And that pretty much is going to be covering it for this video, but there's still more content now that we've defeated the Shaper. There's the Elder, and there's also Cirrus, and there's these other Conquerors. There's still a lot more content in Path of Exile's endgame. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this part where we took down the Guardians, and congratulations if you did. The completion rate for completing the Guardians and Shaper is 0.1%. It's actually pretty small, so not that many people actually make it to the end game of defeating all of these bosses. So if you made it this far, honestly, you are in the top under 1% of the game for the most part. But another thing I wanted to mention is, really quick, is I did get this quiver that has +1 to chain. This is actually something that you want to try to look at, and the reason why is because having that additional chain makes it so I took this off on my I took Ricochet off and I put in Occupying Force. This is actually really good for the League mechanic. So if you guys want to engage in more of the League mechanic, which is something I plan to do. Again, the nice thing with Path of Exile, it's kind of like you build your own endgame. Do you even want to engage in the Ancestors mechanic? For me, I don't really care for the mechanic, but I'm going to try it out a little bit more. I'm going to upgrade the rating of the enemy's army, and I'm going to see how much resource and how many things we can get. And I just like to try out new things, because the whole point of the newer league is to at least engage in the mechanic at least a couple times. But if you don't enjoy the mechanic, then don't do it. By all means, keep on just slamming out maps, level up a couple times. As you level up, like right now we're 95, it takes a really long time to get to 100 in this game. And the downsides of dying, well, you do lose out on XP. There's good ways to gain XP just by simply just playing the game a lot and not dying, or you could do what's called 5-way legion. Sometimes you might see it in this channel. Let me actually go over this before I actually end this video. So what you can do is there is certain channels in here. So one channel that I really like going to is 820. 820 is a really, really good chat, and the reason why 820 is so good, if I go change this to global 820, so you just type in global 820 or right click on here and you just go to 820. I think we're already in it, so it doesn't really matter. But the reason why 820 is so good is people, for whatever reason, this is the era. So this guy's hosting a 5-way normal run. He's charging 4 divines for 9 runs, and he will have like something. So if you want to level up, I mean, this is a very expensive way to level up. If you don't know what you're doing, and I say that because what you can do in these runs is you can level up a bunch of gems and sell them to other players later in the game if you want to, but you have to know which ones are good. For example, like maybe Awakened Cold Penetration could be one that you would sell, but some other gems, even if they're like level 20, unless you are like getting really lucky and you get a 21, 23 quality, although with elemental damage with attacks, certain gems exist as a higher version that doesn't actually just have the ability to be purchased by a vendor and vol orbing it to get to the highest stats. You'd have to get like an Awakened gem, or let's say like with Mirage Archer, yeah, this could be one that you could potentially sell. Like I could scan it right here and you can see that this one is worth 30 Chaos Orbs just at level 20 with 20 quality. So there are certain ways with 5 ways where you don't actually lose out on all of your money, but this is kind of more niche and complex. In terms of leveling, it just takes a really long time, because I know some people were like, dude, it takes so long to hit 100 in the game. Honestly, you don't have to hit 100. There's nothing special at 100, but if you do happen to, get to higher levels in the game, it gives you free stats, right? You're getting more HP, you're getting more mana, you're able to put another skill point, which is good. But don't expect to need to get to 100. You can literally complete all the content in the game at level 90. Anything plus 95 is kind of just extra nice stuff, but 95 is kind of where I would say most players will probably hit, and then they're going to be like, well, I want to make another character, or you reach a area, unless your character is tanky enough, eventually you're just going to just die randomly. It happens in Path of Exile, unless your character is super tanky and you're not juicing up the maps, because sometimes you'll just play, like you can see right now, we have a couple Divines, we have 500 Chaos Orbs. Like at some point, you might just want to do a map, and okay, well, let's find at least like a T16 over here. So here's 15. Anyways, more than likely you just want to just keep on slamming out T16s, but you do need to kind of read some of the stuff, and sometimes with monsters dealing extra damage as multiple elements, and then on top of that, let's say you happen to have a monster to spawn in the map with all these crazy mods, it just one-shots you instantly, and you go back in and it one-shots you. Sometimes if you die to a monster, you just cut your losses, go to a new map. If the monster is going to be able to teleport onto you and hit you and you're going to lose that XP, then yeah, it might be smarter just to roll another map. But the game is not easy in terms of the late game. There will be times that you get one-shotted. It happens. Even players that are spending thousands and thousands of hours, just go to any streamer that's playing on hardcore. You can look up Ancestors hardcore death compilation. Even some streamers that have been playing this game for a long time, it happens. What does happen in the game is there's a bunch of nasty mods on your map, and then whatever conditions are met, there could be other monsters that are buffing other monsters that are on certain like terrain that give them some sort of advantage. Like there's some that like give them extra stats. They can heal up, they can regen. There's stuff that makes it really hard, or maybe your flask is down, or maybe another monster activates something to reduce your resistances, or there's a mod that has a reduced maximum resistance. Sometimes there's just a chain of events that makes you feel like you're getting one-shotted, but in reality you're actually taking 3 to 4 hits to actually kill you, but it's also a bunch of bad mods. So keep that in mind as well. Don't feel too discouraged if you die. I've died a couple times too in this game. Anyways, that's gonna wrap it up for this part. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like on it, and I'll see you guys in the next part, which will cover some extra more final bosses. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.